Well, let's explain it to you. We have these little action figure called Rescue Heroes that kids absolutely love. We have a little police officer called Jake Justice. We have his, this is sensitive, we have his partner, Sergeant Siren, his boss, Captain Cuffs. We have an ambulance attendant called Perry Medic. We have a lifeguard called Sandy Beach. We have a construction worker called Jack Hammer. We have a mountain rescue specialist by the name of Cliff Hanger and his partner Rocky Canyon. We also have a medevac pilot called Hallie Copter. We have a scuba diver called Gil Gripper. We have an astronaut called Roger Houston. We have a ski patroller by the name of Alpine. And we have a female firefighter called Wendy Waters. They said, but we want a New York City firefighter to be our new rescue hero. We're going to call him Billy Blazes, but we want you to help us design it. And if you do, we'll give you $1 for every one sold around the world. And that money wasn't going to go in my pocket, it was going to go in my education program. And I'd use that kind of funding to buy smoke detectors to give them out free in New York City to people like you who will listen to me for an hour on how to both prevent and survive a fire. It's a way of drawing people into your audience, especially in New York when you give them something. In New York, if it's free, it's for me. And if you're a firefighter or a police officer, if it's free, you think I could have 3? So I set up a meeting in January of 2001 with the Fisher-Price Corporation. They brought their artist illustrators and toy designs down to my office and headquarters. And for a whole day, as I'm speaking about what a firefighter looks like with his firefighting clothing, his tools and equipment, the artists had art pads on easels with crayons and markers in their drawing. And at the end of the day, they have a firefighter fully sketched out, and they took the artwork and they went to the factory. From January 2001 until July of 2001, it was a 6-month process. They made the first mold and prototype. And they called us up for a meeting. They wanted us to look it over before we went into mass production. So I set up another meeting in the first week of July of 2001. They came down and they had the mold and prototype. Billy Blazes, a New York City firefighter. We looked it over and there were certain things that we thought they should kind of change and tweak a little bit. We don't have blue firefighting clothing. There's a lot of different things that I think they miscalculated. So one of the Fisher-Price executives said to me, Joe, tell me something that's signature about a New York City firefighter. I said, well, there's things I can tell you and things I can't tell you because there's women in the room. I said, well, sometimes we're unshaven, we got big mustaches, and we also smoke cigars. And she says, well, we're not going to put a cigar in Billy Blazes' hand. So she took out a big black Sharpie, and she said, he needs to look more like you. And she drew the big mustache on Billy Blazes. They went back to the factory, and they remolded Billy Blazes with the changes, including the big mustache. And 3 weeks later, they called us up for another meeting. They came down, they showed us the new Billy
And now, a workshop of the McAllen City Commission. All workshops are open to the public in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. These workshops allow for detailed staff presentations.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop. Let's see, we have any questions to staff regarding the meeting? Incredibly enough. Lawyer? No. Then out to item number 2. Boy?
Yes. Yes, sir. Item number 2, we're bringing back the discussion of longevity pay. Mayor and Commissioners, we actually talked about this during budget last year. We had a thorough presentation, but the conclusion was, based on what we're doing for employees for the fiscal year, we decided to wait on this. And so we also told you we were hoping to bring it sometime at mid-year this year so we could have a discussion and make a decision and then put it part of the budget moving forward. So you're gonna.
That's the reason we have a lot of employees here today.
Actually, I don't know who these people are. So it's up for discussion, and if you decide, whether it's today or another day, to move forward with it, it won't become effective until October the 1st, and we will have a discussion during budget. But there is some concerning statistics in here that I think we need to be paying attention to. So we've got the HR Director and Assistant City Manager ready to go.
All right. Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, Jeff Johnson, Christina Flores here is our HR Director, and we just wanted to talk to you today specifically about longevity pay. As City Manager mentioned, we discussed that last year during budget. So we'd like to give you a proposal to consider. I'm going to try to go through the presentation quickly because we have 84 slides. No, just kidding. There's like 9, so we'll make it quick. Just kidding. So we'll go to the first slide here, and I want to show you how we got here. Back in 2019, we showed you this slide that showed an increase in employee turnover, and we were trying to address this issue. On the next slide, you'll see kind of what we did to start coming up with solutions for this. We put this honeycomb chart together that showed issues that were important to employees throughout the organization, and we rated these either good, fair, or poor, and then put together a plan on how to improve these. And on the next slide, you'll see the plan that we put together, a 7-year plan that was presented back in 2019, and this showed different areas that we could tackle to improve what we were seeing on the previous chart. We added floating holidays to this list in 2019 and 2020, an adjusted scale with increased vacation days in 2020, and then a salary and compensation study was started in 2019, and then we actually completed implementation of that in 2021. That was delayed a little bit due to COVID, but we got that finished up with data that we had started collecting back in 2019. So longevity pay was on that list, and you'll see we put that into a pending mode, if you will, up until this year. So again, this is the chart from 2018, and you can see how we rated different areas of importance to the employees. And then the next slide is going to show what that chart looked like in 2020. There were a couple of changes because of the increase in number of holidays, because of the increase in number of vacation days. We saw a modification to that chart, and it moved those areas from poor to fair. What I'd like to show you now is the chart as of 2023. And what you'll see is that there's also a few changes here. The first one is that pay has changed from fair to probably somewhere in the fair to poor area, and that's because we're a little bit further behind now than when we were a couple of years ago when we implemented the compensation study. Remember, the comp study brought us to midpoint with comparable cities, and that was a couple of years ago, and so we've seen changes now that have brought us a little bit further behind that midpoint. On the environment, we showed environment changing from fair to good, and this reflects what we believe to be a very positive culture within the employees of the city, a strong internal culture. But I would just point out on this that it's important to note that high level of performance and the good culture that we have here does actually take a toll on the employees and can be difficult for them. We expect a lot of our employees in the city of McAllen, and what we see is that oftentimes as employees leave the city, they're leaving for either higher paying or even equal paying positions, but they report back to us that they're thankful that they're not working as hard as they were while they were here with us at the city. So that's something that's a little tough for them. Dress codes are other issues that are related to that. We have a high dress code within the city. A lot of people don't have that in surrounding jurisdictions, and especially with the new generation coming into the workforce, that's something that we get discussion about regularly. Also retirement, you'll notice that retirement went from good to fair in our chart, and while we still participate strongly in the Texas Municipal Retirement System, which is a very sound system, what we've noticed is that more and more jurisdictions around us are offering repeating updated service credits to that program. That's a benefit to the employees, but it's something that we don't do here in the city of McAllen. As a result of that, we feel that we're more appropriately marked right about midpoint with the cities that are around us. The reason that all this is important, we'll go to the next slide, is because this is where we are now. You'll see that the changes that we made back in 2018, 2019 resulted in reducing the turnover rate in the city, but as COVID has left and we've seen nationally an impact which has been felt here, which is the Great Resignation, many changes in the workforce, we're seeing our percentage rate of turnover increase. And in fact, right now, we're looking at a rate that's a little bit closer to 20%. So it's definitely something that we need to keep a very close eye on. And so what we're wanting to do is give an opportunity to make some changes to that. This is the new proposal for the 7-year plan, and the modifications that I want to point out to you. You're going to see an implementation of longevity pay this coming fiscal year is a recommendation. There's also a cost of living adjustment at the top that's listed right now with a placeholder at 3%. We're sure requesting at least that. Also, you'll notice the salary study down towards the bottom. Instead of beginning that process, we'd like to start that process, if possible, a little bit earlier in 24 and 25, and we'll talk more about that in meetings to come. So with that in mind, we'll go to the last slide, which is the actual recommendation for longevity. This is the plan. It's $175 per completed year of continuous service with the City of McAllen. This would, as the city manager mentioned, take place in the new fiscal year. This is for non-civil service civilian employees only. This would be based on continuous years of service as of October the 31st of every year. And then the plan would be to pay this out as a lump sum in the second pay period in November of each year. You can see there that there's an estimated cost of about $1.7 million, a little over that. That's all funds. The impact to the general fund here would be approximately $1.1 million. The number is actually $1.169 million to the general fund. And that's it. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer those. It is $1,100,000 for the general fund. It's $1,169,844. The estimate is 1.7. That includes all funds. It includes the public works, sanitation, airport, all the external funds as well. Yes. Yes. Retirees, those that simply resign, those terminations, it's all included.
What percentage would that be? Retirement?
Do we have the retiree percentage?
I'm sorry, what was the question I was trying to get?
I might have that here. Give me just a sec.
By retirees?
Well,
Yeah,
and
the
other
percentage for
terminations,
retirees.
The other figure that
It's about 11% for retirees right now
of the 17
of the total that left the
of
city.
17.2.
Yes, about 11% of that is retirees. Yeah,
No.
about 1 in 10.
11% of all turnover.
Correct. Of the 20% that are leaving, about
1.7% of the overall is retired.
correct.
Oh, their overall city.
And on the ratings, I mean, it's a really good infographic to kind of get big picture. But when you have some of those, let's say the ones that need to get addressed, right, that are poor, if you had to break down the response rate by time, maybe broken up into
We,
groups, right, 0 to 5 year, 5 to 10, 10 plus.
in terms of the,
In other words, how the responses vary from a 0 to 1 year compared to a 10 plus year, right?
yes.
Yes, we do.
Are they poor? Are they poor good? Are they poor fair? It makes a difference, I think.
So it depends. Yeah, it depends on which particular area you're talking about. As an example, sick leave, that number stays the same for employees regardless of how many years they've been in. So some of these apply to all employees, but in terms of why employees are leaving, we have all that information. We do exit interviews with the employees. Most employees choose to fill that out when they leave and then give us good information about specifically what led them to depart the city. They're given a list and they select one of those options.
Yes, and so this is based on comparison to other cities, yeah.
Yeah, the honeycomb chart there is really comparison to other cities with what's offered here at the city of McAllen. Correct.
It's not what we're surveying, it's not what's on the exit interview, specifically, yeah.
You earlier cited, the personnel are going, maybe lateral move to a nearby community. They're not having to work as hard. I'm paraphrasing, is that what you said?
That is what I said.
Is that the common response that you're getting from the ones that are going through this attrition process?
Do you want to answer that from the HR side? That's what I hear. You know, it's fairly rare that employees want to come back because the work is too hard where they've gone to. It's the opposite. You know, the kind of anecdotal feedback that we're getting from employees is that, you know, the workload is significantly less in other communities. The stress level is lower. And so if they can do that for similar or even more pay, it's a great opportunity for them.
So if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think in comparison to other cities, what we hear is that, I mean, this is a fast-paced environment. We're larger than many other cities in the valley, and we don't operate as other cities in the valley. And so the demands are higher, and so I think that's where it's coming from. It's like the expectations are a lot higher. So the environment is good, and so is our reputation, but that comes at a cost, right? So.
So working hard in terms of putting more effort, or there's more hours that are required to keep up with the pace? Is there some sort of category or issue that we can look at?
Well, that too. It really is just the level of work and expectations that we experience here in McAllen. I mean, in order to keep up with being the best, you know, you've got to do, you know, it comes at a price. And so the expectations are you've got to be at your best at all times. And so this is not a place where we come to loaf, right? And I'm not insinuating they do that at other cities, but the workload again is, and the responsibility and the workload is just divided up differently than it is here in McAllen.
Are there any strategies there to address that, where you feel like, yes, I feel like I'm working on everybody, but I don't feel like I'm being burdened, or that I'm having to work hard?
Well, and I think part of the difficulty is the turnover is when we have so many vacant positions, and so then that means that the employees who are here are carrying extra load, right? And so that's why we're trying to address the turnover, because you know it's impacting in various ways. This being one of them included. Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I mean, there's a couple of ways I can imagine. One, increase salary, right? You also can create additional positions to share the responsibility, so that the workload, the caseload, or the expectations are kind of spread out. You know, with rather with one or two individuals, and then it becomes a little more bearable. I'm not a management guy, right? So that's one matter.
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of our plan here is to try to reduce that turnover. You know, we don't want to diminish the service that we provide either. And so, you know, and it's not just a one-faceted solution, which is why we came up with the 7-year plan that was going to take time to implement with various factors in it to kind of try to address the various areas. I mean, we're dealing with different types of employees, different levels in their career, but we do have a lot of data that's showing, you know, which sections of our workforce are the ones that are leaving us the quickest. And so, you know, we're trying to do things to target that.
This is the last question. Last question, A.
Sure.
Which department had the highest attrition? And B, which department had the lowest attrition?
The high.
You probably want to know that by
Well, I mean, within the department, because the responsibilities and expectations in Parks and Recreation may not be the same as airport, convention center, you know, public works, right? But at least you can tell me where you have the highest amount, and maybe we can start there, looking at that department and see, well, what are the strategies that we need to work on?
For 2022. Yes, so the highest one for 2022 was animal control, and I do not remember the lowest. Out of 40-some departments that we have, I don't remember what the lowest one is. But
Statistically, that's kind of an anomaly, because I recall having a conversation that there are only like 5 guys in animal control. Now,
yeah,
I don't know if
there's
I'm departments at least, you know, or
Yeah, it's still a percentage of their average number of employees is how we calculate it, yeah.
Yeah, and we're writing down some notes, so it looks to me like we'll bring you back some
Yes.
information. We're gonna get this retirement percentage, termination percentage, highest percentage, but also number of employees and size of department.
Department,
Right? That's good
We
information.
talk about year-to-date turnover, you guys want to see the, year-to-date turnover also.
So currently, we're at 4.9, trending to be at about 20% at the end of the year. But yes, we'll include it in the presentation.
3 years and under, 1 year and under.
Okay, with that?
Make up a big portion of it.
The breakdown by years of service?
It's a whole different industry, right? But I know at the bank, we have about a 30% turnover, but we find that to be the majority is frontline tellers, less than a year, right? College kids, summer jobs, up and down schools. So we want.
Number of years of service, we can bring that back.
Usually you want to make sure that, I think,
Yeah, and we've
your
got it.
turnover becomes important, right, on all fronts. But turnover, I think, for more tenured employees is more critical than sometimes turnover at the lower, at the
Earlier,
earlier stage.
yes. Yeah, no, and that is what we're experiencing. So we lose the majority between the first 2 years, and then the rest of the workforce, it's a little bit less. So yes, our majority,
Let me
Yes.
ask, I don't see the PUB here.
No, we're going to be presenting that tomorrow at the PUB. This includes everybody. This includes both PUB and city, the turnover.
Oh, it does.
Yes,
The turnover does.
the turnover.
Not the dollars.
Correct,
Not the dollars.
Correct.
The turnover.
correct.
So the 17.2 includes the 250 employees
Correct,
of the
from,
PUB.
yes.
Well, it is concerning to me, but also we need to really look at the experienced. Anyone that's been here for between 5 and 10 years and above, those are we really need to look at that we don't lose them because. That's what everyone's looking for, experience and I love that we train well and that we make them go to get their accreditations and we try to we expose them to other departments. Remember in our program where we expose them to other departments just so that if they want to move on to another field or another department or I like that part of it, and I think that needs to be continued, but I think the experienced individuals, losing them, when you lose them, you lose a lot.
And that's what longevity tries to do, is, obviously it's an incentive to stay. It's a slug of money that you're gonna receive at one time, and we're looking at November, right? But that's what longevity is supposed to do, is to keep those people that are here. Because it's not insignificant. I mean, I think we're doing, fairly well on what we're proposing, especially in the middle of the organization. For somebody that's in the middle of the pay rate, that's significant.
Yes.
That's been here 10, 12, 15 years. So, what I'm proud of is that this is what we, as a city commission, approved 7 years ago. We've tried not to make stuff up as we move forward. And we've been very methodical on every one of them. The compensation study was impactful. But what we found out, as Jeff said, is that cities, it's the way it is. Cities found that we're doing a comp study, they did a comp study. And so, it leveled off the playing field. One of the things that I would also want to say is, when you look at this, what do you call this, bubble chart?
Yeah, the honeycomb.
This chart, when it says fair, that's not a bad thing, okay? I mean, I'm not real concerned about fair. Fair means that we're at the market. The ones that should concern us are holidays, or those concerning us back then, holidays, sick leave, vacation, other benefits. And we've made improvements. If you look at 18 versus 23. So we're still headed in the right direction, but we haven't been able to get that turnover curve down. And so what it tells us is that we got to keep working at it. We're just in year 4 out of 7 COVID had a lot to do with what we're seeing, and I would probably venture to say that cities around us are experiencing the same thing. So we just got to keep working at it. This is not a small number, but it's something that the commission said you wanted to do 5 years ago. Yes, sir.
No, I was gonna say, I agree with kind of the direction of what you were saying. I was happy to be here in 2019 when a lot of this kicked off, year one of the 7-year plan, but you're right, we're in year 4 of 7, and I know we had a lot of discussion last year. I think we stuck to the plan. I think even year 4, year 5, 6, 7, I think we need to see the plan all the way through to see the full impact, right? Get the full benefit of the plan, of the study that was done. It does come at a heavy cost, but, I think taking care of your people is definitely priority number 1. They'll take care of your city.
Right.
So, I know we have a lot of questions on just more detail information for us, but, I'm definitely for the longevity pay and I'm for, to some extent, whatever discussions we're gonna have in budget to continuing the proposed 7-year plan.
Yeah, we had, I'll call them 4 red bubbles. Now we have 3. So, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Okay,
All right, we'll bring you back this information we requested.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
More green bubbles. I'd like to skip to number 4. You've got a very important report on 3 and 5, and hopefully we can get to it. But it's in your packet, so I'd like to go ahead and do the City Hall expansion.
You want to control the presentation?
Right, I want to get to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. You can use that. I'll use it. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. Roy, today we have a presentation from Nomad Architecture. I have Rudy Molina, the owner and principal of the firm. And we have Olivia Curry, an architect that works for Rudy here to make a presentation on the City Hall feasibility study that we did. I don't know if you wanted to add anything before we get started.
We went through it with the staff, and it's a good presentation.
Having said that, I'm going to pass this over to Rudy, and then Olivia will get started with the presentation. We have a real short presentation for you guys.
Actually, Olivia's going to take the lead on it, and I'll just chime in as needed.
Job security. Good afternoon, everybody. We have been working with the engineering department over the past couple of weeks to gather all of this information, and we've been asked to summarize it as much as possible. So we'll go through it briefly and then allow the opportunity for questions and answers at the end. This feasibility study was awarded to us so that we could assist the city of McAllen in determining whether or not they could consider an addition, an expansion. When we talk about the future growth of the city departments, a lot of that conversation you all were having just prior to our session now. And so what we did was we studied the existing departments and understood a little bit more about their future growth needs. We considered, of course, the relocation of the city commission down to the first floor, which we understand was something of importance. And then we talked about things like access control and security for the building as well. So what we're enclosing in our study is the information that we gathered through the interviews of these department heads to kind of understand where they're at now as far as headcount and space and their future needs. And then we also did a facility assessment regarding, for example, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing conditions. And so there will be an appendix to the final report that does include information about the needs for those types of systems within your existing facility. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the proposed expansion and space configurations, talking about how we would better group different departments together based off how they function. And so that all will be summarized briefly for you today. So as I said, our first part was the facility assessment. We considered what the existing floor plans were, the space configurations, the MEP conditions as well. And so we have for you the site plan, the existing building footprint, the location of, for example, parking, circulation, existing generator. And then by floor plan, we talk about, based off your existing first through third floors, it's about 15,000 square feet gross per floor. And so what we did was we determined the department spaces, their current relationships, and what we did was provide existing floor plans of levels 1 through 3. And so that's what these next few pages are. And so we start to learn a little bit more about, for example, information technology and their existing server room. And so what does that look like moving forward? What can we do with our existing spaces so that we're maybe not having such a large impact, and who can stay in the existing building and who needs to probably go into a different space just because of their function. So that's what these plans represent. We did also want to make sure to let you know that our MEP assessment will be an appendix to this report. It has a lot of information about what you have existing in this building, the recommended upgrades that are required, and the costs associated to them. So you'll see that in the final report. Getting into the evaluation of departments, we wanted to share with you a schedule of the actual interviews that we did. The order of how we met with these departments doesn't matter, but we want you to know that we did meet with your department heads and that we did make it a point to interview them. And so we had a survey that asked about their current head count, their current workstations, meaning like more of a cubicle style space versus maybe some of their offices. And the reason we asked those questions was because as we continue to grow in the next 10 to 20 years, we want to understand, are you growing in workstations? Are you growing in offices? What's your head count projection going to look like? We also wanted to talk about equipment, for example, for IT needs and that sort of thing. And then a big item was storage. And so we learned that there's a lot of offsite storage that maybe needs some more security. And so how do we provide those spaces for the departments that require it, and what does that mean as far as their new footprint within City Hall? And so this is just a sample of those reports, and then what we're doing is formatting that information into a summary by department so that you can see that information. So all of that information summarizes into two main components, headcount and square feet. And so we talk about the current headcount being 198, that's within your existing City Hall departments. And within the next 10 years, we see that growing by about 87, and in 20 years, 69. So a total of 354 as your headcount over the next 20 years. And so what that means is that you have office space for these departments. And so we're not talking gross for the building, we're talking about footprint per department office space. The current footprint is about 31,922. And in the future, what we're saying is we have auxiliary space, so that being conference rooms that are shared or within departments. We talk about the 10-year growth and the 20-year growth, bringing us to about 19,592 square feet of office space needed. And so our projected growth total would be about 51,514. All of that information was summarized from lots of master charts that we created from our interviews, but just to kind of break that down for you so that you see where we got that from, we have by floor, by department, their current head count, their 10 and 20-year projected growth, and then we also talk about square feet. And so the bottom line numbers, again, that were highlighted in the previous slide, is that we need to get to about 51,514 square feet to accommodate your departments. And I say that and I describe it that way because aside from that department space, we also need things like circulation. So we've got stairs, we've got elevators, we have public restrooms and mechanical spaces and that sort of thing. And so now we talk about the overall proposed expansion. And so your existing City Hall building, which we're in right now, is currently at about 46,790 gross square feet. So that includes circulation, hallways, public restrooms. And the proposed addition, which would be a 5-story building to the north, is about 5 levels. So including that 30% circulation and service space, we're looking at about 51,810 gross square feet of an addition. So combined, those two facilities now, so the existing plus the new, would be 98,600 gross square feet. Now, you'll notice under that number I have 30% circulation and service with about almost 30,000 square feet. And then your level 1 of that addition is proposed parking, so we don't include that. And so then what we're saying we would have available as office space for your departments to use would be 58,940 square feet at the end of that addition. And so what does that look like graphically? And so we have your level 1, existing City Hall. You see the original footprint, the proposed addition to the north, occupying some parking space. So we relocate your generator yard and your service yard for trash, for example. But we create a secured level 1 parking on that first floor. And so now we break it down by level. So you see that parking with elevator, stairs, and the connection to your main building or your existing building to the north. Also on the first floor, what we've done is we have allotted 6,000 square feet for the City Commission on the north end of the existing building. And then we also keep, for example, your Customer Relations Department and your tax office, which would see a lot of the public on that first floor. Once we move up to the second floor, what we've determined is that it's probably best to keep information technology with their large server room generally in their same footprint and expand them a little bit more. So as we start to move some departments around, what we've learned is that it would be a little bit more feasible to maybe spread some of these departments out within their existing space, if it makes some sense. And so that's what we're doing primarily with the existing portion of City Hall on the second floor. On the addition, which would be level 2 of this new facility, we would propose having the mayor's office and the commissioner's conference room maybe on the east side of that building, of that level, I'm sorry. And then what we are also providing is shared conference space. So a lot of what we received as feedback was that currently we don't have enough conference space within the existing City Hall. So we're providing a break room and conference space. All of the circulation is in yellow on every floor, so we're primarily keeping the circulation tied to what the existing City Hall has. The third level would allow for us to expand purchasing and contracting, give them a little bit more space. Office of Communications, for example, would stay in the same general area of the building, but again, expand into their space. So we provide them a little bit more room. And then we have human resources, for example, employee benefits, finance, which we've learned kind of have a relationship to each other, all on the same level. And so level 3 allows us to put departments where they best function together. And so when you have a new employee, for example, coming in, it makes it easier for them to navigate what they need to do as a new employee for the city. We also, on this level, took advantage of an existing area that could serve as a break area. So you'll see shared break at the northeast corner of the existing building. And then on the new portion of level 3, we do have finance, management, and budget, which we understand currently have a relationship. They're a little bit overlapping right now in their spaces. And so we're giving them their room to grow, but also keeping them generally together so that their function can continue as necessary. And levels 4 and 5 do not connect to the existing building other than, through their elevator and stairs. But we do have the city secretary and risk management on the same level, level 4. And then level 5, we have city management and city attorney. In general, the circulation, the public spaces all stay within the same central part. And so what we then provide you is what does this look like as a whole new building. And so you have your addition to the north, you have your existing city hall, and then we've provided you a few elevations. The fun part is seeing the renderings and what that could look like. And so further studies will kind of help us to maybe adjust the fenestration or the relationship between the heights within the buildings. But we do show you that we can easily make an adjustment and make them look as one cohesive building by taking a few elements from the existing city hall. And so then we have another rendering from the northeast corner of the building, which shows the addition again to the north and the relationship between the two buildings. Another item that we could potentially study is expansion of the existing city hall parapet to make them look about the same height. What we've put on this slide for you is just that example of other things that can be further studied as far as the relationship between the two buildings so that they look as one cohesive building. And then one of the final elements was, of course, parking. And so what does it mean for us to maybe take up some existing parking to put in this new 5-story addition? And so we lose about 12 spaces, and then with the growth as far as the head count over the 20 years, we would need to account for about 38 new spaces, which luckily the city of McAllen can easily gain off of street parking, for example. And so we've talked about that a little bit more, just documenting your existing spaces and your future needs. So what does this mean financially? We talk about adding the 5-story building first. Of course, it makes the most sense to build your new structure so that then you can move people into it and then do what you need to the existing facility. And so we estimate about $400 a cost per square foot for a new facility to kind of meet the needs of the departments, to talk about things like mechanical equipment that would be accounted for in that $400. And so at about 51,800 square feet, we're talking about $20.7 million for that new addition. And then as far as your renovation for your existing building, we estimate that about $200 a square foot. Again, that accounts for things like moving walls and maybe adding some new finishes, upgrading your lighting and things like that. So we're looking at about 9.3 million for that. The extension of the existing facility parapet, we estimate about 250,000. So total, if you were to create your new facility, expand into it, renovate your existing city hall, we're looking at about 30.3 million as far as an estimated budget. And then the best part, of course, is living through the construction phases. And so we have to consider circulation of departments and making sure that we prioritize maybe timing and that sort of thing. So we talk about construction document preparation, bidding and procurement, and then actual construction and occupancy. And so what we've proposed is just a very quick phase out of that. And so we talk about, let's go ahead and take the time that we need to design and build the new facility. And so you'll see that that goes just over 2 years. And then there's a little bit of an overlap when we start to talk about what we do with the existing facility. We talk about, for example, starting on level 3, because as we start to move departments out, we can start to work on renovating those spaces. And so we overlap as much as possible the construction, for example, and we try to simultaneously be designing and building at the same time to help alleviate the stress that that's going to put on all of these departments. And so that's what this slide quickly reviews, that, you know, in just over 3 years, we would propose getting both the new and the renovations done to this building.
And this is keeping most of the city working in the building as much
Operating.
as possible. Yeah, operating.
Question. On the southern wall of the proposed extension, why is that not flush with the existing building?
The addition.
Yeah, the addition. It can be flush, but it's sometimes safer to keep a distance between the buildings because of movement. So, and your connection will make that adjustment, but that's why it's not flushed.
Because it seems like that's going to be unused.
Well, no, actually, you also need it because we're keeping the exits from your current building, and yes, and that's what's keeping us as well. So it's a two reasons why.
I know it's super preliminary, but the kind of just layout of square footage for each of the departments, was that based on analyzing each of their growth needs, or just kind of planting them, you know, big picture right now?
So it's a little bit twofold. So part of it is understanding the relationships to each other, which we prioritized, of course. But then it's also occupying your existing city hall spaces so that you're not, for example, pulling a department out of a space that maybe they could still exist within. But yes, the primary reason why we placed them the way that they are and gave them the space or the footprint that you're seeing in that proposed expansion shows their projected square foot needs after 20 years. And so that's where this large amount of information kind of breaks it down. So if you want to maybe pick a department, for example, we can show you their current, their proposed, and how we got there.
I will say, though, that when we went through it, there were some, I'll call it obvious departments that we thought we needed to really reevaluate. Some seemed like they were growing too much. Some seemed like they were growing too little. And I don't want to point them out right now because I don't want them to frown.
Let me get off
But,
that.
yeah, but we have been looking at adjustments already, Commissioner. But we feel very strongly that the total GSF, the total proposed, is right where it needs to be. We can adjust the departments, but the total's going to be pretty close.
I know, nothing mentioned there. He's got about an 800 square foot space right now. You go to almost 1,800, that's a small house, and it says required at year 20. Don't necessarily be required for 1,000 more square feet.
Well, I mean, a lot of things happen in 20 years. That's part of our executive session. We use it in a lot of formal meetings for dignitaries. Anytime we've got friends from, especially from Mexico, that's the office we use. We can't fit them right now. There's just no way. So that is really one that we identified needed a lot of space.
Got a follow-up, I guess, to that. Not so much the mayor's space, but so the for the next 20 years, this amount has been calculated that that's going to be the need, right? So why would we want to build something today that we may not need until 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Well, we're looking at it actually the other way. We have a need, right? And so we can either build for the current need, or we can look at some kind of forecast. So there's definitely a need right now. It's probably, I'm going to throw out a number, probably half of that 51,000 feet is what we need today. But then how efficient are we going to be by doing that and then having to come back 10 or 15 or 20 years and doing it again?
So the current need would include bringing departments from outside of City Hall, I'd imagine. I mean,
Yeah.
because they're somewhere right now.
Tax and IT are two departments that would already come
Right.
back.
It's twofold. Like, if you go, I think the best examples that I can think of right now where we've got crowd problems is finance, budget, IT, and purchasing. I mean, they're back to back. There's people back to back. No privacy, no nothing. And for those high level kind of interactions that happen at those departments, you just need more space. Two is we want to bring the tax office to City Hall the way it used to be. And then three, the IT department actually has people scattered all over town, mostly in the library, that do not fit in our current building. So we're doing both things. We're expanding for the current need, and then trying to be efficient by estimating 20 years. We could estimate for 10, but we'll be back here. I promise we'll be back here. Or somebody will.
Oh, the other thing, boy, I'd rather, every time I see the numbers 400 per square foot, always gives me a heart attack. So I can just imagine 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So we can take care of it right now.
Yeah, and if you look at, really, we've got another issue is the development center. And by taking the tax office out of there, it's gonna give us some breathing room. The development center is problematic right now.
It's
Period.
used. It's heavily used.
It's heavily used. I'm gonna tell you, it was well designed, because remember, it was an existing building. I was not a proponent of that, and I was convinced, after I saw the renderings and whatever, that was the way to go. What we said back then was 5 to 10 years, that it would hold us for 5 to 10 years. We're at year 10. And so, we're just packed with people.
Okay.
City Commission chambers, is this about the same size then? 6,000?
No.
No, right?
This
It
is,
goes from 4,500 to about 6,000 more or less.
So this is about 4,500.
Yeah.
But that doesn't include this little kind of foyer landing area outside?
No, that's,
The renderings don't really have anything like that, so it's almost like a hallway straight to chambers? Is that?
Where are we?
on the first one.
Yeah, proposed expansion level 1.
So we've talked to Rudy about trying to make something grand at the entrance, but, I mean, that would come in the next phase of the design.
More detailed.
Yeah, we've told them that the ceiling's a little lower. Is there a way to bring that up? They're all design issues that can be worked around. Unfortunately, each design issue does come with a little bit of additional cost, depending if you want to remove beams and how ornate you want to make that entrance.
One of the things that, as a board, we discussed with city management was, one, to make it more accessible to the public, to reduce the amount of frequency of the public to go into the other floors. So that's a security issue, for those employees who work in City Hall, right? In light of some of the circumstances that's going on in our country, across the world. And I think, it goes back to the accessibility, transparency issue that we've always tried to address, that it's accessible, you can reach us, you don't have to take elevation, it's right there. It kind of has a funnel effect in terms of the people. You gotta be here for some city business, and you've got 3 places to go. You're either here for a meeting, you gotta go pay your water bill, or you're gonna pay your taxes, right? And I think if you simplify it that way, I think it goes and also the overarching goal of safety, not only for the public, but for the employees is met.
Well, and the tower with the parking lot on the bottom and the elevator shaft gives you added security to that whole tower in the back for your city management and attorneys and all that.
Roy, that's the presentation.
Good.
So the only other comment I was gonna make was, we have the 5-story combined project total. Will we have a option 2 and option 3? Let's say we wanted a 3-story option with maybe a 10 to 15 year need projection.
We can develop
Okay.
like a phased option,
Okay.
or what maybe what we need in 10 years, and then the 20, maybe option 1 and 2.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think at one point we had talked about there being options here, and today we're hearing one option, which is a 5-story building.
Yes. But just also keep in mind that this is a 4-year project. So you're almost going to be halfway into your 10 years by the time it's completed.
Yeah. Yeah, his timeline shows, I mean, from planning to designing to construction, because it has to be staged, right? We can't do everything at the same time, because we're gonna have departments moving. It's a 4-year process. Yeah.
Well, for a year and a half, when you're building the tower, you won't, because everything will remain the same as you have it. It's that transition period, which is another year and a half, that you are going to have a little bit of a mess. And it's per floor, the mess.
And the $400 figure is
With a projection.
conservative?
Yeah, it's a conservative with a projection.
With a
Yes.
projection.
Right now, we're at 325, 350, but,
Okay.
yeah, there's.
Good.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, back to item 3, presentation of recent subdivision issues. Kind of a couple of things have been coming up here lately that the planning department and Michelle has brought to our attention. And that's what we're having to deal with, you gonna come up here, Michelle? With districts that we have a great relationship with, and fire protection. We've actually been talking about fire protection concerns for 20 years because of how we operate with organizations like Shareland. But now they've become more prominent, and we believe it's having an impact on our development, and you're going to start hearing about it as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, that's correct. More than anything, we wanted to bring it up to light and then start a conversation, get some direction possibly. The first thing is Shareland Water Supply Corporation and our relationship with them. Obviously, Shareland Water holds a certificate of convenience and necessity for water supply on our northwest city limits. They are, or they were created rather, to be a rural potable water supplier. Which means all their lines were engineered and were designed for that purpose. The city, however, is the one that's tasked with fire protection within its city limits, and this can be an issue when we have hydrants that are hooked up to lines that don't have that pressure. We currently have water line access agreements that are executed by the city, Shareland Water, and the developer, and so those agreements give the city's hydrants access to those water lines, but they don't promise that the required pressure will be there. And so to that end, Legal has prepared an indemnity document that would be signed by the developer and the city to protect the city in case the water line doesn't have the required pressure in case there is a fire. I can add anything here he feels or may not feel.
I think the only thing to add is we looked at the agreement between Cherryland developers and the city, and it has indemnity that it requires of the city and the developer to Cherryland. And we really felt like it was prudent, my office felt like it was prudent to recommend that we require the developer to understand the potential limitations in what they're proposing and to protect the city.
The developer as the developing the land and subdividing?
Correct.
For them to be liable if there's water pressure in the lines?
To indemnify the city from that liability. In other words,
the developer will indemnify the city?
Correct.
As they currently do Sharyland right now.
Yeah, that's what it is right now.
Correct. And the real impetus for the thought was that the document between the three-party document between Sherryland, the developer, and the city requires indemnity to Sherryland from both the developer and the city.
Well, yeah, but there's always been a problem with that agreement or.
It is a very challenging relationship.
Exactly.
What would be the long-term solution for it? Without the necessity?
Changing state law to allow MPU to expand its service area, or dual CCN, which remains a legislative priority for MPU.
This is a conversation that Commissioner Peters and I had at some time. When you saw the movie before. I can see that happen. I mean, obviously, no offense to Sherman, certainly that's not my point today. But, you know, at least the little that I know, the water line size needs to be very big difference in terms of providing the pressure that would be necessary. But we can't just piecemeal it together. We're developing that part of the city, as, you know, especially during TJ, to be supported for decades. You know, and you're going to have what happened with Red Rock, you got to jump that entire area so you can get that service area for a little more comfortable, right?
Correct.
And I think that's not a thorn in our side. I think that's just an issue we have to address. And understanding that Sherland Water Supply has served its purpose, and it serves its purpose very well in our county when it was much, much more rural. Now it's become suburban and urban. You know, times have changed. Growth is growth, and we have to manage growth. And part of it is being responsible enough to, we're going to need that dual CC now.
But wasn't there some state changes a few years back, a year ago, 2 years ago, that made it more mandatory of both Sherryland and North Alamo Water and military and all of those?
It gave some options. It doesn't get us all the way there. In a perfect world, you would see Sherryland's CCN shifting away from the city, and the MPU CCN.
No, but existing CCN. Now, don't the rural water supplies, because that's what they were, don't, if it's urbanizing, wasn't there some laws passed to make them accountable for pressure?
There were attempts. I don't think they were successful.
Really?
I'll double check. But
Really?
there were some significant attempts last session at making some changes, and those failed.
Okay. Check that out.
I think whenever we get a little bit of chance, we really need to discuss this.
Yeah.
Be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, but I think, honestly, a complex issue probably sits on the legal realm, but to a normal citizen, when they see a fire hydrant, they expect fire protection.
Right.
Not something that was placed there as just for decoration for their dog, right? They expect fire protection. It would be unfortunate if that was not the case.
Cool. Executive.
I think the purpose of the conversation was to make sure that everybody was informed. You know, when developers see the document that we've proposed, Commissioner, you understand a lot of those waivers come with a lot of bold caps, and the document looks like you're being screamed at. But just in case you heard from the community, we wanted to make sure that you were aware of the challenges that exist and the attempt to find solutions.
The next one's just as problematic.
And there's another one. This one's our relationship with the United Irrigation District, who relatively, it's a small portion of McAllen's on the western side, Benson all the way to Monte Cristo. But by ordinance, we are required to send all new plats to water districts, school districts, utilities. And so they get all our new plats. They're not required to sign them, so we process them even without them. But project engineers do coordinate with all districts just to make sure everything's good. They have recently started to claim a blanket easement from 1916. As you can see on the bottom left hand, they literally just kind of wrote it in and they made a signature block. Same thing with plat note number 16. They noted in there that 1916 document. The bigger issue is that they've also included some handwritten plat notes. They do have very broad wording. City staff are the ones who have to enforce plat notes. If you can read plat note number 3, it would basically require the builder to get written permission from United Irrigation District before they get any permission from us, any permits. So it's a little bit easier to deal with in commercial development where you have maybe one lot, one owner, it's just one person. But once you get to talk about a 20, 40, 60 lot residential subdivision and you get 20, 40, 60 owners, probably not 60 contractors, but a good number, that is definitely going to slow development down. We usually turn out building permits within 5 days, usually a little bit quicker. I don't know what internal deadline United Irrigation has. I don't know how many staff they have devoted to this. All I know is the way it's written, I need written permission from the district before I release the permit. And so it will be a headache. Again, your commercial developer could probably handle it a little bit easier than your residential person who wants to build a shed or something similar.
So District
Or
1,
home, of course.
District 1, District 2, District 3 does not have this.
No, sir.
So all of a sudden now
United has started. We already have one plat that was recorded like this. Luckily, I guess, in quotations, it was a commercial property. So we were able to get that clearance from United pretty quickly. But we are working on getting about 50 lot residential subdivision recorded soon. We expect these notes to be there as well.
They're not releasing it for a fee to the developer?
My belief is that there probably is some selling of easements there.
Omar might be aware, but we've got a long-standing, something that kind of came up about a year ago with this irrigation district number 2. And we see it at the bank.
Correct.
When you get this clearance letter, which really is a clearance letter, it basically gives the person the option, pay this fee, or we have this indefinite sort of right to your lot.
Correct.
For easement, almost the whole thing. Tunnel companies are primarily just closing and waiving it, but it leaves this kind of burden on the
Correct.
property owner, right? And
Yep.
it's going to start to spread out. This sounds very similar to that.
I believe so.
The whole kind of lawn, very little how you find the easements. But what measures or actions can the city take?
I'd be happy
That's the
to
question.
I'd be happy to
Executive.
discuss a legal strategy with you in executive session if you want to have that conversation. I will agree with you, Commissioner, that plat notes like this and other claims that we see from irrigation districts from time to time certainly create clouds on title that are a challenge to deal with.
And time, it takes
And
a long
time.
time.
We've seen major delays.
But it's not necessarily our plant.
Correct.
But it should be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So you're going to need direction in the future from us.
Yes, sir, probably coming from an executive session.
Let's study it a little.
Okay, so I guess we'll do this workshop.
This concludes the workshop of the McAllen City Commission. Workshops are held every second and fourth Monday of the month, convening at 4 p.m. at the McAllen City Commission chamber on the 3rd floor at McAllen City Hall.
Fire Department Lieutenant Joe Torello, who survived both towers crashing down on him on 9/11. His presentation was nothing short of inspirational, and he congratulated organizers for hosting the annual conference.
We're in a new world now. We're in a world where we have to be very vigilant all the time, and we need to be proactive, again, in having prevention programs, but we also have to learn to react as quickly as we can to mitigate a situation.